Hiya guys, my name is Serac and this is my new series, Yu-Gi-Oh! On a Budget. In this series I'm going to be putting together decks at the sort of £100 to £150 mark. I'll put up all the prices. So without further ado, let's get started on my very first deck profile, which is Burning Abyss. Now Burning Abyss is one of my absolute favourite decks of all time, going right back to Duelist Alliance format when it first came out, and I pulled my first Dante. Unfortunately, I never managed to play it at full power then because I couldn't afford the £100 a copy Dante was at the time, so I had to make do. But anyway, Burning Abyss has come back a little bit with some Block Dragon variants. Now that's banned, so this is a trap variant that I've got to show you today. So let's get into the deck list. So we've got 3 Tour Guide from the Underworld. This is the best starter in the deck. It fetches every single monster in the deck bar 1 or 2. Yeah, bar 2 and your hand traps. So it just helps so many of your plays go off. You need this to resolve for your main combos, your main plays. If it doesn't, then it can just end your turn. If you normal summon a Tour Guide and it gets ashed, your turn can sometimes end. So you need to be careful. Have the called by, bait out the ash before you Tour Guide, because otherwise you just lose so much advantage and you'll probably just get OTK'd the next turn. So then your main target for Tour Guide, we've got Fiendish Rhino Warrior, which is, yes, as I said, your main target. Summon the Tour Guide, get the Fiendish, make the Dante, detach the Fiendish, send Graph, special summon Seer. You mill with Dante, you get whatever you get there. If you mill a Graph with Dante, great, then now you can send a Scarm with Fiendish, which means you get to search another Tour Guide for the longer game. In the late game, sending it to the graveyard means you might be able to banish something with a Farfa to push through an OTK, or negate something with Alech to force out one of their negations, or to stop a floodgate type effect. It's really, really good. Also, don't forget its first effect, where it stops Fiend type monsters from being destroyed. It stops your Burning Abyss monsters from blowing up. It's really, really useful. Stops a lot of destruction effects, and people forget about it. So that's Fiendish. So on to the Burning Abyss part of the deck. 2 Graph and 2 Seer. These are the core of the deck. You know what they do. They've been around for ages. Graph gets from the deck, Seer special summons from the graveyard. You're looping these, using Dante to get back, using Seer to bring back your Dante. Dante then adds back your Seer. You discard the Seer and make your Beatrice. It's very simple. Dante is not hard once per turn. These are. Also, Seer is the biggest attack-wise Burning Abyss monster, which does make some, which is important for some OTKs and so on. But they're really good. Really glad they're now at 2. It helps a lot with, you don't have to worry about them getting banished by your opponent who's running a DD Crow or similar. Two copies of Scarm. Scarm is good in the long game. It's not as good right now, which is why I'm not running the full 3. And generally, you don't really want to draw it because it's fairly dead in the hand. You want to be sending it as an extra one to set up for turn 3 of the game. That's when you want Scarm. Scarm obviously does nothing turn 1. It only helps you if the game goes to turn 3. So you need to be confident in your ability to survive your opponent's turn for Scarm to go off. Also, don't forget to activate it. It activates in the end phase. Don't miss it. Every Burning Abyss player will have had horror stories of that one time they missed their Scarm effect and then immediately lost the game. Three copies of Farfa. Shout out to Farfa. Farfa is your disruption. Beatrice allows you to send Farfa during your opponent's turn, which can, if you hit the right point in their combo, can essentially end their turn, or at least make them put out a much, much weaker board than otherwise. Also, obviously, it's very good in your turn as well. It helps you break a board, helps forces a negate, helps you push damage through for an OTK. So Farfa, that's the reason you run 3 Farfa, because it's basically never dead, and it will always have a use after turn 1 of the game. Alech is your 4th copy of Farfa, essentially. It's not quite as good, but it's a breakthrough skill. Again, you can activate it on your opponent's turn with Beatrice, with some of your traps. It really helps with annoying floodgatey type monsters, or monsters with lots of negates, just forcing them to use their negate on the Alech, and then, say, allowing your tour guide or similar to go through. Slippex helps unclog your hand. If you've drawn lots of Burning Abysses that you don't want, that you want to use their effects, obviously sending a Slippex allows you to get one out of your hand. It won't blow itself up because it's not got its effect, and you'll still get its graveyard effect when you link or detach it. So that's what Slippex for, it's for unclogging your hand. So now we're on to the disruption part of the deck. So, hand traps. 3 Ash Blossom. This is one of the most expensive parts of the deck. You may have them, you may not. They're about 7-8 quid at the moment. They're really, really useful. Obviously, you all know what Ash Blossom does. Three copies of Effect Failure. Again, if this wasn't a budget build, these would be Impermanences. If you have Impermanences, get them, use them. They're really, really good in this deck. They have a lot of synergy with Trap Trick, and they're good going first or second, and they can be used on your turn, whereas Veiler can only be used on your opponent's turn. So an Imperm can stop a negate on your turn. Veiler can't. Then a couple of more one-off monsters. We've got one Absolute King Blackjack, which is a card that's not really played anywhere else. It allows you to excavate the top card in your opponent's turn by banishing it from the graveyard. If it's a trap card, you can set it and immediately activate it. This is a trap deck. We run a lot of traps. This can be very, very helpful in the grind game, in just finding that extra bit of disruption to stop their combo, and so on. And also, this card allows you to stack your deck as well. So if at the end of a turn you've managed to you can send it to the graveyard with, say, Beatrice, stack the top of your deck for traps, then immediately banish it, excavate the trap, set it to your field. It's really good for finding one extra disruption piece if, say, you're out of Farfas or you desperately need a trap, a particular trap effect that can help you there. And finally, one Pancreatops. Again, longer games, going second. It's an extra body that you can use for links. It blows up anything, and it's a very, very cheap form of disruption that can be used. So now we get onto the spells. We have one Foolish Burial. It's every card in your deck's effect at once. You're never unhappy to see this card. You will know what Foolish Burial does. You will know why it's so good in Burning Abyss. All your cards have graveyard effects. And then one Called by the Grave. Ash Blossom on your tour guide absolutely sucks. You need to run this card, otherwise you will lose to Ash Blossom on your tour guide. Also just helps for occasional graveyard effects or shenanigans that come from other cards, any other hand trap that might get in the way of you there. So it's just very, very good there as well. So now we get onto the trap part of the deck. Most important trap card is 3 copies of Trap Trick. This is essentially copies 4, 5, and 6 of just about every trap in your deck, bar one that we're running a one of. Again, lets you set any trap from your deck. It allows you to set the trap you want specifically for the situation you're in. It's just a really good part of the deck, and it's what gives the deck its flexibility, its ability to respond to any situation, because it allows you to run this toolbox net type trap lineup where you can fetch any trap you need at any point in the game. 3 copies of Lost Wind. Stops effect negating, helps prevent OTKs, you can bring it back easily. There's a whole number of uses for this. Obviously, because it halves an attack, it can be activated during the damage step. You can bring it back when they bring something out from the extra deck. And it's a permanent effect that you can get with Trap Trek. It's essentially like having, again, extra copies of Veiler or sort of imperms that can only target special summon monsters. It's just a very, very good card. It's your 4th, 5th, and 6th copies of Effect Veiler. Fiend Griefing. It's a themed trap card DD Crow that you can search with Trap Trick, and also sends any of your monsters from the deck to the graveyard. So say you could banish something from their graveyard that they were about to revive, then you can send a Farfa to banish one of their engine pieces they've got on board, or an Alech to stop it from going off. You can send Blackjack to get another trap card from your deck if you need one, or any number of cards that are in your deck. You can get a search if you want to go off the next turn with a tour guide. You can wall up a little bit with a seer or a graph. It's just, again, a really, really solid card that allows you a lot of flexibility with your plays. Finally, for the normal traps, we have 3 copies of Paleozoic Dynamiscus. This is your generic removal. It's very simple. Discard 1 card, target a face-up card, banish it. It can come back as well, which is obviously relevant for link summonings. You activate lots of trap cards, so you can bring it back and then use it to go into any of your link monsters, or as an extra material for, say, your Mascarina or similar. Then, finally, 1 Imperial Order. We run 2 spells in the entire deck. One of which we're only ever activating on our turn anyway, and the other we're quite often activating on our turn anyway because it's to stop hand traps. So Imperial Order just really helps with those spell-heavy decks, such as your Shadol variants, your Invoked variants. Dogmatica now can't search with Nadir's Servant. It stops Forbidden Droplets. It stops Tactical Talents. It stops all of those really back-breaking effects that we can't use because we're a budget build, and they can. So we just have to play an unfair game. Really, really good card. So that's the main deck. It's 40 cards exactly. And now we'll go on to the extra deck. 2 copies of Dante. This is your main playmaker. It attacks, it defends, it mills you, sets up your graveyard, and it brings stuff back when it's sent to the graveyard, and that's not once per turn. So every time you send a Dante, you get a card back. It's your easiest way to make Beatrice. It's the cornerstone of the deck. You can run 3. I just only happen to own 2 myself, and I think 2 is fine. It gives you a lot more flexibility with your extra deck. The extra deck is very loose, very free-flowing. You can run almost anything you want in it. And that's that. 1 Cherrabini, again, prevents your fiends from being destroyed and sends level 3s to the graveyard. We've got lots of level 3s we want to send to the graveyard. Also, don't neglect the attack increase. It sends us a cost, so Cherrabini can't be ashed. But also, yes, don't neglect the attack increase. It can help with pushing through OTKs, pushing over something that you might be unable to get over otherwise, and just generally helping to break the board with sending your disruption pieces or your setup pieces. Beatrice is your mainstay of disruption. You make a Beatrice, and then in their turn you detach a material to send Farfa or Alech to stop them doing whatever they're doing, or Blackjack to be able to set up a trap. It's, again, really, really good card. It's got 2800 body and 2500 attack, so it's difficult to get over in battle, and when they do get over it, you bring out Pilgrim. Now, purple Dante is not very well known. My camera just focuses there. Beatrice ignores the summoning conditions of it, so you can ignore that top line. Allows you to draw cards and get your Burning Abyss effects, and then if it is destroyed or sent to the graveyard by a card effect or by battle, then you get to loop a card out of their hand. It's not an it's a good card. You won't use it most of the time, but you'll be very glad to have it when it comes up, and it really, really discourages people from destroying your Beatrice, which is the main reason you run it. One break sword, sometimes you just need to blow something up. We're not running any Phantom Knights, but obviously Breaksword is still good at just getting trades. You will tend to come out on top of those trades because obviously you will gain advantage from sending your cards to the graveyard. F-Zero Utopic Future. All our Xyz monsters are rank 3, bar Beatrice. So we can just use this to out so many problematic cards in the battle phase. And just, again, allows us to push through damage for OTKs. It allows us to remove problematic monsters in the battle phase. It allows us to bait out negates in the battle phase and just generally take problematic monsters out of the game for a short period of time, but sometimes that's all you need to get through what you need to win the game. So now we're on to our link portion of the deck. This is the very tunable bit, but we'll start with the most important link in the deck, in the extra deck, and it's IP Mascarina. So your standard turn 1 play ends you on a Beatrice and a Mascarina. Beatrice will have one material that you can use for a disruption, and then Mascarina will obviously allow you to make a link 2 or link 3, so a Nightmare most likely, with the Beatrice, and therefore you get an extra spin from Unicorn, or blow up a back row, or blow up a monster with Cerberus or Phoenix. If you can get another monster onto the field, you might be able to make something out. You might be able to make a link 4, such as our 2 link 4s. First one, Appaloosa. Again, lots of negates. Very useful for going first decks, that you can make it on your opponent's turn if you have the right setup. It's a lot cheaper now, it's only about £8, so with the reprint in the Megatin and in the Gold series it's coming out in a little while, so definitely aim to get your copies of Appaloosa. So then we've got a Nightmare package. This is your main disruption in conjunction with IP Mascarina. Unicorn, Phoenix for annoying floodgates and things. Unicorn just as an omni out to anything that can't negate it, and Cerberus for blowing up monsters. Don't forget that IP Mascarina prevents your cards from being destroyed by card effects, which again does occasionally come up. So then we get onto the final bit. These are the flex slots, and these are the ones where I've had to make some cuts for it to stay under about £150. So first card, a card I'm testing, is Bujinki A Hashima. So this is summoned with 2 monsters with the same level, which again, most of your monsters are level 3. And then when it's link summoned, you can immediately special summon 2 monsters with the same level, one from hand, one from grave, but negate their effects. And immediately after this effect resolves, Xyz summon 1 monster. So it allows you to make another Dante or another Breaksword by just, again, it's just getting you an extra piece of board presence, which then might allow you to get that extra monster to make the Appaloosa or one of your link 4s rather than just a link 2 or a link 3. Its second effect also, if an Xyz monster this card points to would detach a material to activate its effect, you can target a spell trap and destroy it. Again, very useful. Helps in grindier games against back row decks, against decks that play field spells. This allows for a lot of flexibility. And then finally the two big link 4s that I've chosen to play, Borreload Dragon and Topologic Cereborus. In an ideal world, you could run Access Code and Borrowed Sword, but we're on a budget and Access Code is currently over 70 quid and Borrowed Sword is around a tenner, and with the other cards like IP Mascarina and Appaloosa being so good, I felt that these were the best ones to change out for. Borreload outs just about anything, can't be targeted, it's a huge body, hits over anything with under 3,500 attack, and steals their monsters and then sends them to graveyard. Cereborus, if you can lock them into an extra monster zone, is very, very good, because obviously it means that they're immediately going to trigger it. It's been errated now, so it triggers on the next standby phase, not during the standby phase of your next turn. So if you banish it in your turn, it will come back in your opponent's turn. It's an OTK machine. It hits astronomical levels of attack, so I just went for that. Sometimes you just have to blow up the board. So that's it for the deck profile. And now, just for a few upgrades, I mentioned some of them. The biggest one you could probably get would be three copies of Infinite Impermanence to replace probably the effect failures. But other than that, the main things would be finding some money for a Borrowed Sword Dragon and potentially an access code talker if your budget will stretch that far. But I hope you've enjoyed this video. I will be looking at making some more of these if the response is good, and I will hopefully upload some combo videos or some future deck techs on similar budget decks, sort of aiming again for that £100–150 mark, so we can all play Yu-Gi-Oh! A bit cheaper. Thank you.